Welcome to Sailing Avanti. We are Gerard and Jacqueline, sailing our 41-foot monohull Avanti around the world from Cape Town, South Africa.
On this episode, we leave South America and head for the Caribbean, but neither of us have any idea of what lies ahead.
We just untied all the mooring balls in Domber, Suriname, and we're off to Union Islands in the Grenadines. Our stay here was very nice. The jungle was spectacular, and the marina itself in Domber was lovely. There is another one that has it's an actual marina, not the mooring balls, and we didn't hear great things about it, so we rather stayed on the mooring balls. Really cheap, good pool, good bar that runs all the time. Really was a nice stay here in Suriname.
This is our first day after leaving Suriname last night, on our way to St. Vincent in the Grenadines. We've had quite a rough swell coming out of the river mouth at Suriname, swell on the nose and wind on the nose, and no possibility to sail because you can only follow the buoys, and the channel is quite shallow, down to, I think we measured 2.5-3 meters, and our draft is 1.9 meters, so it's quite shallow there, so you get quite boxed in. After that we turned to port to go more to the west towards the Caribbean islands, but we also have pretty much wind on the nose. So we are doing a close reach, and it's obviously not the most comfortable point of sail for extended periods. It's quite wet and the boat heels quite a lot, so not great. And we're doing this leg alone. Our crew that came to us to Suriname left yesterday, flying back to South Africa. So it's just me and Jackie on this leg. So the watches are quite long, and we have quite strong winds and swell, so we have to be quite alert all the time.
With so much water coming over the deck, we found new leaks daily.
And as per usual, dolphins and a very nice sunset mean we're in for a rough night. Oh wow. The total distance on this passage is just below 600 nautical miles. The timing on this passage is quite tricky because we have to leave the Suriname River with the tide in our backs. We have to arrive in Union Island on a weekday, not on the weekend, so that we can clear in. And we have to arrive preferably in morning so that we have enough time to clear in and arrive in daylight hours. We also have to consider the weather window. With quite strong winds predicted, we end up flying just the Genoa partially filled out for most of the passage. But even with a partially filled Genoa, we still managed to average more than 6 knots over the 3.5 days sail. We're sailing off the coast of Guyana, just north of Suriname, and what's just shown on the charts as just a few shallow spots, which is not a problem for us. Turned out to be like, I don't know, a gas exploration field. So it seems like there's gas and oil platforms and there's hordes of ships, so we sailed right into the middle of it, and we probably had, I don't know, 20 ships around us going very slowly, strangely, and just almost following the weather. And we had to on numerous occasions radio these guys and ask them to steer away from us because we were sailing on a close reach. We couldn't really tack because then we'd sail into quite a big swell right on the bow, so we had limited ability to kind of maneuver around. So yeah, in the end they did make way for us, but it was quite stressful sailing through these platforms, and some of them were stacks burning off gas, it seems like. So quite interesting that it's not shown on the charts at all.
I just came upstairs. I woke up from the sound of gas and the smell leaking, and I thought we had a gas leak. It sounded quite severe, and it was actually a fire extinguisher that rolled and that depleted and actually half exploded in one of the cabins. That was one of the crew that left a fire extinguisher loose in a cupboard, so it must have rolled and actually it depleted itself, which is a good thing, rather that than gas.
So on the morning of on the second morning of our passage from Suriname to St. Vincent, I started my watch and I heard like a weird crackling noise coming from under the helm, and I thought it was the steering cables maybe, so I opened the lazarette to access that, and I started smelling a burning smell, so definitely electrical fire. So I don't know how we've been so lucky, but one of the 220 volt cables coming from the inverter runs in a conduit, and I did not check that cable. The terminations look good when I put in the new inverter, but there is a joint that I didn't know of in one of these conduits. So luckily, when I opened this up, I started ripping off conduits, and almost the second one that I ripped off, I got a bit of a shock, and so I didn't know if it was 12 volt or 220 volt that was causing the issue, and I suspected in that conduit was 4 12 volt cables and 1 220 volt multi-core cable, and I suspected that shocked me. So I immediately switched off the inverter inside the boat, and when I came back out I could feel these cables being hot and busy to melt. So it is strange that the inverter didn't trip, but it was obviously a small short, but very, very lucky that the position it was in was so close that we could switch it off basically immediately. So I almost thought we had the worst issue we could have imagined, to have a fire on board. So not a good passage this far, lots of small little issues and bad sea state, some heavy wind. So yeah, let's hope we get to St. Vincent soon. So we're busy preparing our first proper, well, semi-proper dinner. Always difficult making food during a passage, but yeah, you need to eat fresh. So as you can see, we are rolling a little bit. It's been the wind's been on the beam with swell on the beam basically since we've left Suriname. The swell has calmed down a lot today or this afternoon, so Jackie is brave enough to try and make a meal for us without injuring herself. Yeah, but she's bracing all the time, and last night we just had 2-minute noodles, so I'm looking forward to something fresh and something cooked. See?
These are the length of the green beans in Suriname. They're absolutely huge, and they taste a little bit more salty, and it's a bit thinner than the green beans that we're used to, but could be a head of hair.
We constantly have to adjust the sails, making the sail bigger or smaller as the squalls come and go. approaching Union Island, so we don't want to arrive there at night. So we've got about 80 nautical miles left, and we've just adjusted our sails so that we can sail a little bit slower. Just have a small portion of the Genoa filled out so that we can try and time our arrival there in daylight. So very happy to be close to land, but it's always an issue timing your arrival so that you don't arrive at night.
We've made it to the Caribbean. We're in the Caribbean Sea, just off the Grenadines. There in the background you can actually still see a part of Grenada, and the Grenadines is right in front of us. Harat is busy hoisting our courtesy flag, the country flag, and the Q flag. The Q flag is the quarantine flag, and we hoist that up until we finished the quarantine time, if there is, if we finished port control, customs and immigration. So up goes the flag soon. It's a bit rainy this morning, had a few squalls coming in, but it's all good and well as long as we've got some sunshine later today, and hopefully this beautiful island. Union Island is where we'll clear into the Grenadines, and the bay that we're going into is Clifton Bay. It reminds us of home, where we normally went to the beach. So it'll be a nice change of scenery from the river that we're used to in Suriname. As Harat readies the anchor for our first anchorage on our journey, the sails start to flap, which means it's time to furl them in and start the engine.
We skipped past Grenada this time as we want to spend some more time in Grenada, maybe a few months, on our way back down the Caribbean just before the hurricane season. We chose Union Island as our first stop based on recommendation from friends we met in Suriname. Union Island is the southernmost island where you can clear in. There's also very good kite surfing, which I hope to enjoy. As we approach the anchorage, we see a lot of masts, something we didn't expect during the COVID pandemic. We circle around to search for an anchor spot and try and squeeze in between two monohulls in a very shallow area. We lightly grazed the sandy bottom. Luckily we were going slow with no damage to the keel. The seabed here consists of a hard sandy bottom with some turtle grass, so not ideal for anchorage. We eventually decide to pick up one of the mooring balls, which come at a small fee, but since we're only staying 4 nights, we decide it's worth our while. It's a beautiful evening here in Union Islands, part of the Grenadines, and we made some dinner on board with some potatoes from Suriname, as well as aubergine and green beans, those long green beans. We have some wahoo that we caught just before Suriname, and some South African wine from a wine farm called Zandvliet in Robertson. So we're really eating very nice tonight.
Join us next week as we finally get to live the Caribbean life. By scrolling down, you'll see links to our social media as well as Patreon, where you can contribute to the making of these videos. And don't forget to subscribe.